And so when anybody else tells me about their religious experience, I mean, like when I read about George Harrison, for example, who, he chants the mantras to Krishna, repeatedly until he says he can see Krishna actually appear in the room. He can see him, he can hear him, he can talk to him, he can laugh at him. It's just like there's a real person really there. And John Lennon was buying into the same thing too. They're both professing the same thing. You tell that to any Christian, and the Christian won't have a visual apparition of Jesus to talk to. But even though they have this tiny little imperceptible thing they're imagining in the back of their head, and they're calling that talking to Jesus, they automatically discard George Harrison and John Lennon and all of the other Hindus, or the Bhakti Hindus, for having this more direct, more vivid experience of their God. I also met a pagan, who somebody I've known for decades, who adopted a belief in Bast, the Egyptian cat-headed goddess, because she manifested herself in his house, where he could see her. And she gives him a hug and begs that he become her disciple, which of course he did, because, when does Jesus ever physically show up and shake your hand and say, "Hi, I'm Jesus"? And, so I listened to all these other religions, and probably the best one was when, in 1981, I read this thing from Thailand, where this girl was talking about how she had this huge elation, this huge overwhelming experience. It was exactly like my rebirth experience, where she said that she had this dizzying euphoria, where she's light on her feet, and for hours everything is fantastic, and all of her troubles just melted away the moment she accepted Buddha into her life. And it was almost verbatim what I had heard people describe about Jesus. So I realized there's not any truth to any one belief over any other. In fact, all these other beliefs have psychic energies and
Okay, Aron Ra. I concede you can explain away religious conversions, religious experiences, but you can't scientifically. Your mind is not smart enough. Your mind is too primitive. Your mind is too Bronze Age stupid to figure out just what in the goddamn bloody color of busted cunt pussy on the goddamn fucking tampons rack fuck. It's happening scientifically in the next case study.
I was conducting a revival, a associational-wide revival sponsored by the 27 Baptist churches in that parish in Louisiana. In Louisiana, they do not have counties like we have in North Carolina. They have parishes. And this was a parish-wide revival. And we had come to the last night of the meeting, and I was preaching this sermon, and the meeting was being held in the rodeo arena. And as I preached, on the last tier of seats, over to my right, on the last row, top seats, were three men that I'd never seen before. And they had laughed and made fun. Now, preacher, it has never bothered me. When a little baby starts crying, the mother gets up and walks out, that don't bother me. But under God, I cannot preach if I see two young people laughing. I cannot preach if I see anybody mocking. It just somehow or another takes it away from me. 3 times. I stopped. And I said the last time, if you men don't want to hear me preach, a lot of these people have come from miles to be here tonight, and they do, would you just get up and walk out of the arena? One of them said, if you think you're man enough to come up here and put us out, you just come up here. And I prayed a prayer. Never have prayed before, never have prayed since. I said, dear Jesus, let me backslide for 15 minutes. And I promise you, Lord, if you'll let me backslide for 15 minutes, I'll go up there and beat the devil out of all 3 of them. And God said, I didn't call you to fight, I called you to preach. He said, you turn them over to me. And I did. And they continued to mock all the way through the sermon. We had over 400 people to walk down that aisle that night and give their hearts to Jesus Christ. I fully intended to never show them enough attention to address them again. But just as I was ready to pronounce the benediction, my arm came up. Preacher, did anything ever come out that you hadn't planned to say? that you couldn't help but say it? Has that ever happened to you, brother? How many of you preachers here have ever had something just come out that you didn't have in your notes and it just came out? Yes, every preacher, every God-called preacher has. And my arm just came out and I said, I do not know who you three gentlemen are. But all three of you stepped over God's deadline, God signed your death warrant, and God's going to kill all three of you. That was about 10:15 Sunday night. At 8 o'clock the next morning, I didn't know who these men were. They were three businessmen. One of them put the key in the door of his office on Main Street, Ringo, Louisiana, and dropped dead. At 11:30, the second man started across the street to a little restaurant to have his lunch from his office, and a lady was driving up the street and almost ran over him. She said he just walking along normal, fell flat on his face, and died right there in the street. At 5:30 that afternoon, the third man was sitting in his office, and he said to his secretary, my two friends are in hell, and before the sun goes down, I'll join them. And pitched out at their feet a corpse. My wife was with me in the revival. We had closed the revival meeting on that Sunday night, and we had driven about 100 miles to a little country church to begin a revival meeting on Monday night. And there were no motels within 25 miles of that little country church. And we were staying in the home of the pastor. We had preached on Monday night. We had come back to the parsonage. We had had us some refreshments, and we had gone to the room that had been assigned to us for our bedroom when I heard the telephone ring. And I heard the preacher, when he answered, he said, no, I'm not going to call him to this telephone. He is so weary and so tired, I'm not going to call him. Unless it's an emergency. The party on the other end of the line said it's an emergency. And when I got there, it was a pastor of the First Methodist Church. And he told me what I've told you. And he said, Brother Harold, our whole parish is in uproar. So we had a meeting tonight with a number of the preachers, and we tried to rent the rodeo arena for next Sunday night, but we can't have it. But my auditorium is the largest, and would you come back next Sunday night and preach? I turned around to the pastor, and he gave me the consent to close the meeting on Sunday morning. My wife and I drove back that 100 miles. We left in order we might get there about 30 minutes before the service to begin that night. When we drove up, there were over 1,500 people in that yard. They couldn't get in that building. And they said, the people have been here for over an hour and a half, preacher. Not a person, not another person could get in that auditorium. I got down and started walking down, sliding down the sidewalks, my wife and I. And the man that was in charge said, preacher, don't sit down. Just come on and preach. And before I could open my Bible and read one scripture, 17 men jumped up out of that audience and ran down that aisle just as fast as they could get down there, saying, we want to get saved. I want to tell you, this is the hour in which we can commit this sin.
Aron Ra, you've been able to debunk scientifically religious conversions to Jesus, the Buddha, that Egyptian cat goddess. You can explain what's scientifically happening in a religious conversion. When people believe what they want to believe, and when they want to believe in Jesus, Jesus comes to them. When they want to believe in Buddha, Buddha comes to them. And yet, as you say, it's all bullshit. But Aron Ra, neither you nor you stupid atheist compadres are smart enough to figure out scientifically what's happening. What happened to these three men who did not believe in Jesus. In fact, they were mocking Jesus and the preacher the night before. Until the preacher told them at the end of the service, all three of you have stepped over God's deadline and blasphemed the Holy Ghost. And another telling of the sermon, the preacher also mentions having told them God's going to kill all three of you. These preachers, and one of the men said, oh yeah? Because obviously they did not believe in Jesus worth a damn. And yet all three of them died the next day. So what the fuck is happening scientifically? Aron Ra, if there is no God, 2,000 years from now, atheists are going to look back on you, Aron Ra and Matt Dillahunty, and say you were all stupid. You didn't know shit about shit. Like atheists will know in the year 3,000 or 4,000 if there is no God. Let me challenge you, atheist Aron Ra. You've demonstrated that Hinduism, all the other religions, not just Christianity, have conversion and near and new birth experiences. You can scientifically safely debunk religious experiences as being emotional and bullshit. But these stories by J. Harold Smith, and they're true. And don't you dare say J. Harold Smith was lying. He was a Southern Baptist evangelist that believed in Revelations, where it says that all liars shall have their part in the lake which burneth with fire and brimstone. He's not going to tell an intentional lie, especially when he was there to witness it. These stories, you cannot, only in Christianity have men been killed for refusing to believe in Jesus. Aron Ra, I challenge you to find similar stories like J. Harold Smith's in Hinduism, Voodoo, Mormonism, or Islam, because you can't. I bet you $1,000, you bitch. You Bronze Age bitch. You Bronze Age fucking caveman. You dumb as a rock caveman. You sucker. You never do it. Sucker. You never do it. You're not smart enough because they don't exist. The only conclusion I can come to, and I'm having serious doubts about Jesus, because I already know that there was no Adam and Eve, no Moses, no Exodus. But I just cannot give up believing in Jesus. And Aron Ra, bitch, until you can scientifically explain what the goddamn fuck is happening in J. Harold Smith's story without saying J. Harold Smith is lying, you do not stand a snowball's chance in fucking hell and get me to change my god fucking mind. I want to know the goddamn truth. Aron Ra, I curse you for dancing around the subject and not addressing my concerns. I curse you atheists. If there's a God, let God curse you atheist with cancer or a stroke for not giving me the answers I'm so desperately seeking for. I curse you.